When I was playing Hollow Knight for the first time, I was repeatedly left awestruck by just how pretty the game was. I'd often have to stand still and soak in the vibes of any new place I visited, almost like when you're on a nature walk and you come across some beautiful vista and you end up staring to the horizon and feeling completely content with your place in existence for a few seconds before snapping back into cold, hard reality. Needless to say, this game has really sold me on the power of environment design. Not only by just how much of an effect it has, but also how subtle it is. After I'd put about 100 hours into the game and completed everything there is to do, apart from this one achievement, fuck you Markov, I'd find myself coming back to it every so often, not just to bang my head against this brick wall, but also to walk around and appreciate the game's vibrant colours and unique aesthetics. While doing this, I would, almost as if I was meditating, take a long hard look into every detail in the environment that I could sense. And from this, I've drawn a few points about what makes this game's environment design so great that I never would have even thought about when I first started playing through it. So, let's get right into it. So, one of the things I'm sure everyone noticed is the use of parallax for background and foreground elements. For those who don't know, this is when things further away move slower and things closer to you move faster because of perspective. Team Cherry achieved this effect by layering their 2D sprites in a 3D Unity scene, while using a perspective camera instead of the typical flat orthographic ones used in most 2D games, which turned out really nicely. However, there's more to good 2D worlds than just some elements being in the background and some being in the foreground. A whole coronation guest list's worth of techniques is employed in order to maintain readability and beauty. Firstly, objects further in the background are blurred and have their colours slightly muted so that the player doesn't confuse them with elements in the gameplay layer, and elements in the foreground are heavily darkened and tend to not over-obscure the player's view in the most important platforming sections for the same reasons. Another part of the reason that the backgrounds look so good is because of how perfectly they're made for each environment. So much time and effort has been put into thoughtfully staging sprites in ways that define the feel of spaces. Open areas feel more open by having many layers with soft light spilling into the scene, and tight corridors feel extra claustrophobic by having darker shadows and parallax layers closer to the gameplay layer, giving the impression that the walls are, well, closer to the player. In fact, this game is quite dark in general. Any space not taken up by something is almost always pitch black, so in smaller areas it sometimes feels as if the darkness is encroaching on the edges of the tiles, trying to make its way towards you and swallow you up. Which not only makes those darker areas like Deepness feel more constricted, but also makes you appreciate the comfort of the lighter areas like Queen's Gardens even more. The artists definitely knew how to use their colours. They utilize a wide range of expression from the Crossroads' muted bluish greys to Greenpath's flourishing mixture of vibrant green tones that make each area feel even more memorable than the last. This is obvious at the connection points between areas, where a completely different colour palette subtly pushes into the space that you're currently in. All of these discernible features in the design of the environment are made possible due to the sheer amount of detail present in every layer of the game. No matter where you look, foreground, background, and especially midground, there's just so much going on and tiny little details to appreciate all around you. And just like me, you may be wondering, how the hell did Team Cherry manage to fully detail such expansive environments without the help of a steady supply of crack cocaine dissolved in IV solution and directly piped into their bloodstreams throughout the whole of development? Other than sheer effort, I suspect the main reason is the ridiculous level of asset reuse. I mean, look at how many times I walk past this exact same pillar or this exact same flower throughout just a short walk in Queen's Gardens. This applies to every bush, platform, ceiling, and hanging vine in the game. Team Cherry knows how to cleverly squeeze each asset dry of its full potential. They will flip it, scale it, and rotate it multiple times to use it as much as possible without the repetition becoming noticeable. Also, sprites such as bushes that were made to be placed next to each other don't have very distinct shapes, so that it isn't obvious when they're repeated side by side. Many things in the environment also don't conform to some kind of tile set, such as thorns, making the environment feel a lot more natural and like a place that exists, instead of just some pixels on a screen designed to move and make your dopamine receptors go, yippee! What also helps the world feel more natural is this dynamic element to all of the environments. This is due to constant floating particles or fog effects in the foreground or waving grass in the midground, making sure that even when you're standing still, the world is subtly living around you. The empty space in each environment is always filled with some kind of moving effect. The speed and density of the particles that make up this effect has a small influence on the vibes of each area. Other than this, Hollow Knight makes use of a lot of dynamic effects to make the world feel alive not only when it is left undisturbed, but also to make it feel reactive to your presence. As you walk and jump around in Greenpath, you kick up leaves and you make little rustling sound effects with your tiny little itsy bitsy toes. Or whenever you walk past a mushroom in the fungal wastes, it shakes a little and gives off some spores as if you've disturbed it during a long, peaceful slumber. And foreground elements quickly swish as you walk past them. The world is also littered with destructible objects. Attacking any of these shatters them into an impressive array of particles and satisfyingly shakes the screen a little, giving the player a sense of power as they're imposing their destructive will onto this now desolate world. As long as you keep looking for it, there's no end to the fine details that subtly give every area its unique feel. For example, when landing on these moving platforms in Queen's Gardens, these little white impact streaks quickly appear and fade away. But instead, when landing on platforms in the fungal wastes, they start crumbling away and dust slowly trickles out of the bottom. These effects are so tiny and yet do so much to facilitate the difference in feel between landing on these two specific platforms, which is quite important for Queen's Gardens actually, as the platforms have a special gameplay element where they quickly disappear from under your feet. Now, a strange thing about all of these effects is the frame rates that they're animated at. The swaying of foliage and the majority of particle effects in this game, such as the ones caused by the knight's movement, are generated dynamically by the engine, and as such move at 60 FPS or whatever the refresh rate of your monitor is. However, a lot of movements are hand-drawn and animated as low as 12 FPS, that is, half of the character animation's frame rate. The impressive part is how Team Cherry has merged hand-drawn and dynamic engine effects seamlessly in ways that some developers might be scared to do. A really good example of this is the rain in the City of Tears. The rain falling in the foreground is smooth and generated by the engine, but the effect of it hitting the floor or flowing off surfaces in the background is animated at a much lower frame rate, making it feel almost cinematic, and causing it to blend in with the rest of the hand-drawn environment art. On an additional note, all characters in this game are animated at a consistent 24 FPS, and are rendered with a black outline, which again helps maintain clarity for the player as dangerous enemies won't blend in with the background or foreground so much. There's a much better video than I could make on the effects animation of this game by Video Game Animation Study, so if you're more interested in this aspect, go check out his video on it as well. I'll link it in the description. This is probably going to be only the first video I want to make on Hollow Knight's environments, as I've only really touched upon the raw visual portions of it, and there's so much more to this amazing game than just what meets the eye. Huh, get it? Get it? Laugh at my joke! I've touched upon a lot of things in this video, so if maybe you want a list of each individual technique or point for your own game dev purposes, wink wink, nudge nudge, stop procrastinating and get that dream game made, have a cheeky peek at the chapters on this video or named timestamps in the description. Other than that, I hope you learned something cool from this video, and unless I get isekai'd or something, I'm hoping I'll see you in another one.